All right, let's get right into it. Today we're unpacking a really fundamental choice that Sweden is facing in this new modern space race. Is it better to be the one building the future, or is it enough to just buy it from somebody else?
Let me put it to you this way. Would you want in the early stages of companies like Apple or Microsoft? I mean, actually building the ecosystem that completely reshaped our world and captured a huge majority of the market share? Or would you have been happy just buying what they made? That exact choice between being the builder or being the buyer is what this is all about. So here's our roadmap. We'll start by defining the choice. Then we'll get into the paradox at the heart of the issue. We'll also look at how focusing on process over outcome can lead to a nasty convenience trap before digging into how to create a whole new ecosystem. And finally, we'll reveal the proven solution that can enable it to happen in Sweden. Okay, first up, the builder or the buyer. This is really about deciding Sweden's role not just for its own domestic needs at home, but also on the global stage. And this really shows it perfectly. Will Sweden step up and become a supplier of its own space services, both for itself and for the rest of the world? Or will it be content to remain a permanent customer, dependent on technology that's developed and controlled by other countries? Now here's the twist. The main thing holding Sweden back isn't a lack of ideas or even funding. It's what we're calling the paradox of procurement, how the very system that's designed to make sure everything is fair can actually end up suffocating the innovation it desperately needs to achieve the desired outcome. And listen, the stakes could not be higher right now. In the current geopolitical climate, the ability to develop and control your own dual-use technologies, stuff that has both military and civilian applications, that's not just some nice to have anymore. It's an absolute strategic imperative. So the current Swedish procurement system is built on these 5 really solid EU-derived principles. And on paper, they look fantastic, right? They're all about creating a fair and open market. But here's the catch we're about to explore. The rigid application of these admirable goals is exactly what's creating the problem. And that brings us right to the heart of the issue, process over outcome. That's the fundamental philosophical difference when it comes to how Sweden buys things compared to more agile procurement systems elsewhere, and it is holding the country back in a big way. Okay, this is so important to understand. For comparison, the US system is item-centric. It looks at something and asks, what is this thing we're buying? And because of that, it offers multiple flexible pathways that are designed for different kinds of things. The goal is to get the right capability. The Swedish system, on the other hand, is process-centric. It asks, what is the best existing way to buy this? And then it forces everything through a set of rigid, predefined processes that just aren't flexible. The goal ends up being about following the procedure correctly, rather than achieving the best outcome. And that's the key takeaway right there. The Swedish procurement system, as it's designed today, prioritizes the process over the outcome. So to really enable something like New Space, you need a completely new pathway. That means a legal change. If the current rules are preventing the outcome you need, well then you've got to change the rules.
So you might be thinking, okay, why not just find a workaround? Well, that leads us directly into the convenience trap, and we're about to see why the path of least resistance is actually a dead end.
Now, to be fair, current Swedish procurement law does offer a little bit of flexibility. If you sort of squint and apply it in a certain way, it allows Sweden to buy existing space services from the commercial market. Seems like a simple fix, doesn't it? But this path comes with a massive, hidden risk. Because here's the crucial fact that gets missed. Buying foreign services doesn't keep Sweden in the game, it actively keeps Sweden out of the game. It stops the country from ever developing its own domestic capabilities, and it basically locks Sweden into being a consumer forever, rather than putting it on the path to become a supplier. That brings us to Section 5, creating a new ecosystem. This is all about developing domestic capabilities from the ground up, and that starts with a totally new way of thinking and investing. So how does Sweden get in the game? If buying from everyone else is a trap, what's the real alternative? How can a country evolve from primarily being a consumer of foreign space services to becoming a supplier? Well, the first big shift is moving from buying things to buying capabilities. The old system is obsessed with super detailed technical specifications. It tells a company exactly how to build something, which, as you can imagine, just crushes innovation. The new system focuses on procuring an end-to-end service. It simply defines what capability is needed, and then it unleashes industry to innovate and figure out the best way to deliver it. A really crucial piece of this puzzle is a new investment model built on something called milestone payments. Here's how it works. First, The government co-funds the development of a new capability, but not all at once. Payments come as companies hit specific pre-agreed development goals or milestones. Second, and this is the magic part, the government provides a contractual commitment in advance to buy the new capability when it eventually becomes available. And that commitment by the government to serve as the anchor customer is what completely de-risks the whole venture for private investors, opening the floodgates for a ton of private cash.
Okay, so this all sounds fantastic, right? But I know what you're probably thinking. What's the price tag? Let's take a look at the actual numbers behind this blueprint and, more importantly, the potential return on that investment. The proposed path forward is a direct government investment of 6.4 billion Swedish kroner. That's the seed capital spread out over 5 years from 2026 to 2030. Now, that might sound like a lot, and this is so crucial, that 6.4 billion is not the whole story. You have to think of it as just the seed funding, meant to get this entire engine started. Because the real goal here is to use that public money to unlock more than 20 billion kroner in private investment. See, it's not just about government spending, it's about using a relatively small amount of public money to kickstart a much, much bigger economic engine powered by the private sector. And this really shows you what that leverage looks like. The goal is to get a minimum of a 3-to-1 return on investment. So for every 1 krona the government invests, the plan is to bring in at least 3 kroner from private companies. And that's so important because it means taxpayer money isn't just being thrown at random ideas, it's being invested in projects that the free market also thinks are winners. What's so smart about this blueprint is that it's basically a greatest hits album of what's already worked around the world. It takes that flexible, milestone-based funding from NASA's COTS program, the one that built SpaceX, and it combines it with the strategic government investment model that Finland used to launch its satellite champion ICEYE. And all of this brings us to the final and most critical point of the entire proposal. This isn't just an idea to think about for the distant future. The argument is that there is a brief, maybe 1 or 2 year window for Sweden to make a choice that will pretty much define its future in space. This isn't just wishful thinking. Here's a clear, step-by-step roadmap to make it happen. It starts with getting a new legal foundation in place in 2026, launching pilot programs as soon as possible thereafter, and moving to a full program launch by the second half of 2027. As early as 2029 to 2030, proven innovations can be systematically transitioned into operational procurement. But even with all that, it's still not enough, which brings us to our final section. There is one single essential mechanism that has to be put in place in order to enable any of this to actually work.
So let's be crystal clear about this. That milestone payment structure we talked about, it's absolutely vital. But it is completely meaningless without having one other thing in place first, a fundamentally new, legally backed way to buy things, a new procurement pathway. The critical enabler is a mechanism like one they use in the US called an Other Transaction Authority, or OTA. Now, for those of us who haven't heard of it, an OTA is basically a super flexible and fast procurement tool. It's designed specifically to fund the development of new capabilities by letting you bypass many of the traditional rigid regulations that slow everything down.
See, an OTA-like tool is so powerful because it's built for speed and innovation. It focuses on prototypes, not mass-produced stuff. It's designed to bring in new, non-traditional companies that are often excluded by the old system. It's incredibly flexible on things like contract terms and pricing. And maybe most importantly, it creates a clear path from a successful prototype to a much bigger production contract, which gives innovators a real reason to get involved.
And this table just lays it all out. The current Swedish system is slow, it's rigid, and it's focused on well-defined products from the usual players. The goal is to ensure a fair process. The proposed OTA-like tool is very different. It's fast, flexible, and focused on prototypes from new innovators. Its goal is to access innovation and do it quickly. They are completely different tools for completely different jobs. So, we end up right back where we started. The talent is here. Current government budgets contain enough funding to provide the necessary seed capital. The only question left is one of will. Will Sweden create the new legal framework and procurement tools it needs to actually build its own future in space? Or will it stay trapped by processes that, by their very design, force it to buy that future from someone else?